with him to talk about this amazing, terrific film that you have. I really congratulate you on starting out. And it's such an honor to have this gentleman with us tonight. And so we can start out, Michael, we can take this conversation wherever you want to go, but I'll start out by saying, it seems to me that this film is not about Trump so much as it's about what gave us Trump, and which can still give us more Trumps in the future, whether it's this guy or another guy. I think your comments were so apropos about this thing that, you know, the comparison of Nazi Germany and what's been going on in the US in recent years is one that can be attacked on a lot of levels and has been, but yet there is a core, I think, that is very, very valid. And you made this case better than I've seen anybody make it in talking about how sophisticated Germany was prior to the rise of the Nazis. This great literary culture that had so much education and so much sophistication in terms of politics and philosophy and arts and all of that. How could that culture devolve so quickly into something that produced a monster like Hitler and a genocide? And I think you have done a great job in pointing that out. But really it comes, you're starting from the point of how did America get Trump? And I think you really, really do an amazing job of tying together a lot of things. Where did you start with this film in your head?
Well, it probably started, I told Ben that I read a book by the philosopher by the name of Bertrand Gross back in the 1980s. And the book was called Friendly Fascism. And in the book, he predicted that the fascism of the 21st century would not come with concentration camps or swastikas. The fascism of the 21st century would come with a smiley face and a TV show. And that's how the populace would be essentially won, through that kind of propaganda. And, but I mean, I think, Ben, I mean, you could probably speak better than anybody in terms, because you were there to answer Godfrey's question. And I'm a little nervous. So.
You just flew in from Los Angeles too, right?
About 2 hours. Sorry about that. But what is the answer to his question? Because as the historian I interviewed from Yale in the film says, of course, Trump isn't Hitler, but that doesn't mean you just throw out all of history, not pay attention to whatever warning signs there are when a moment like this takes place.
I'll make it easy. All you have to do is put my name, Benjamin Ferencz, onto your website. You'll read everything, books, articles, lectures, motion pictures, and it's all free, which will answer your question in detail. But let me give it to you briefly. I have seen in my experience as a combat soldier in World War II with 5 battle stars, which meant that I landed on the beaches of Normandy and was in every other major battle, that war makes mass murderers out of otherwise decent people. And so I have directed my attention to stopping war making. And the people who can do that are you. It's up to the young people to insist upon a more humane point of view toward all their fellow human beings. It is no cowardice to compromise. It takes courage not to be discouraged. So don't be discouraged by a president here who did remind me of Hitler, because it was the same argument. Germany, Deutschland über alles. Germany over everything. Germany first. Have we not heard it 100 times? America first? What about the rest of the world? Do we ignore them? You must learn to think in humane terms. We are all members of one small planet, and we must share the resources on that planet so that everyone can live in peace and human dignity. That was my appeal as a Nuremberg prosecutor. I am now in my 99th year. And I haven't changed my mind, and I've been working for it ever since. We are making significant progress, so much so We do have an international criminal court in The Hague, newly created. They asked me to do the closing statement in their first trial. I was then 97 years old. And that is being attacked now by the president's leading advisor, John Bolton, who says there is no such thing as law. The court is dead, it should be killed. No American should be allowed to be tried for any crime. With that type of mentality, you're in danger. We also have a capacity from cyberspace of cutting off the electrical grid on planet Earth. If that happens, you won't see 99 years. So you've got to be alert to the danger which now exists. Use your voting power to put people in office who recognize the danger, who are prepared to think in human terms and not in terms of America first. What about the rest of the world? It's bound to think it's not a matter of color. I didn't ask for the death penalty for the defendants who had murdered over 1 million people, mostly Jews. Instead, I felt to be meaningful, I would try to get a new rule of law, and I asked the court to affirm by international criminal law the right of all people to live in peace and dignity, regardless of their race or creed. That was my appeal to the court, and the court agreed with that. They did sentence 13 of them to death, who were obviously mass murderers. So you have to change your way of thinking, changing the hearts and minds of how you approach all problems, and recognize that the people starving in different parts of Africa or different parts of Central America are more important than whoever gets elected to this particular office or who went to bed with who at what time. My best wishes for all of you. Never give up. I have a slogan. Americans live by slogans. Law, not war. If you can do that, you'll save billions of dollars every day, which is now being wasted on buying weapons which can kill more people instead of trying to use the money to help more people. So we've got it all upside down, and it's up to the young people to set it right, because there's one court that's the most important court of all, and that's the court of public opinion. Public opinion is you, so don't be afraid to speak up. Films like this will encourage you to recognize the madness that goes on in the world still today, insist upon humanity in everything they do, and I hope that you will have a more humane and peaceful world than the one I saw. Good luck to all of you.
I also want to point out that Ben's wife is about to turn 100 years old. Is that correct? Yeah. Is what?
I married an older woman. With us now. She has Alzheimer's, and now it's payback time. However, we lived 73 years together, married, with never a quarrel. That's a model for you. We're lucky to
Well, thank you for everything you just said. I think that's very, people are nervous to make the comparison, and while the reviews for this film have been outrageously wonderful, some people have questioned whether or not to put the Hitler and the Germany stuff in here, but as Gabby said,
I think you did it very well.
I wanted to point out that this was a very educated, enlightened country. There were, in the 1920s, statues all over Germany to Jewish war heroes from the First World War. I mean, the fact that this could happen, and the professor from Yale said this to me. It's not in the film, but he made a point that was very effective to me, and it was that we need to always remember that democracy does not have a self-correcting mechanism built into it. We act as if it does. It will take care of. It will take care of whoever is, Trump or whatever. And it's not like a new modern car where if it goes into a skid, the new braking systems now have this self-correction. There is no self-correction in democracy. It is ultimately just a piece of paper, and it's then interpreted by and acted on and amended or not amended by the people of the various eras of the democracy. And he said this is why we have the eternal vigilance that's necessary right now, the danger that Ben speaks of, and the way that we all, I think just as humans, try to, when we feel in danger, try to convince ourselves that there is no danger, or it won't be that bad, or Mueller will save us, or something will happen here. We're going to win the House back. Everybody who says we're going to win the House back is helping Trump keep both houses Republican. If you are of that mind, this is my opinion, I don't speak for either of these gentlemen. If you're of that mind right now that we're going to win in November, you're doing what well, not me, but many of you others did in the summer of '16, when you believed that Hillary was going to be the first woman president of the United States. And everybody was in this giddy state because we knew nobody was going to vote for this douchebag. This just wasn't going to happen. And how could the smartest person ever run for president, Hillary, which I could make that argument, lose to the dumbest person ever to run for president? It just was inconceivable, right? And yet that's what happened. Even though the majority of Americans, which we are, those of you who agree with me at least, we are the majority. We are the majority, and it's been proven for 30 years, and only once, as I said in the film, have the American people said we want the Republican to be in the White House, and it was in the middle of a war. We've never changed a president during a war. So that's it. American people don't want the Republicans running the country. And yet here we are with zero power, and about to possibly lose again on November 6th, because we're so overconfident that we're going to take back the House and maybe even the Senate. And it's, I don't know. I don't know how to express this.
Michael, one thing that you and I have in common is that a couple of months or 2 or 3 months before the election, I put on Facebook, Trump can win. And people got so angry with me, all my liberal friends. It's like, how can you say this? This is heresy. Of course he's not going to win. It's impossible. But what I saw was, this guy's a snake oil salesman, but what he's selling can attract a lot of people who are justifiably alienated working class people who don't think that Obama and Goldman Sachs and Hillary and the Clintons and Schumann and Pelosi are working for them. And I think you're talking in this film about how we got to the point of having Trump, not as much about what Trump represents. What Trump represents is a whole political constellation or culture that comes from a lot of things that includes the Democrats. And you have hit the Democrats very hard in this film. I think it's something that's going to surprise a lot of your fans, but I think it's something that really should wake people up. And it's what you were just talking about not being overconfident in November.
Well, I love President Obama. He is and probably will be the best president of my lifetime. So it was very difficult to have to tell people the truth about how he depressed the vote in Flint and people stayed home. The most amazing statistic of 2016 to me was that the primary in Flint in April between Hillary and Bernie had a record turnout. A record turnout in the primary. The general election had one of the lowest turnouts. It's usually the other way, right? The general gets the big turnout. Primary gets the small. Not in Flint. Because after President Obama drank the water, bombed the city, and then I didn't put this in the film because I just don't want to. I just didn't want a whole film, pointing out everything about Hillary. I think we all know what the problems were with the campaign, with the Democratic Party, and even though I was a Bernie supporter, I like her and admire her and think that she's taken enough shit for decades. And but she was handed the questions in advance at the Flint debate. Remember the Flint debate between Hillary and Bernie? And when that came out a month or two later, when the mothers of the poisoned children who stood at the microphone to ask the questions, thinking that neither candidate knew the questions,